stands a force unbroken, with banners high and hearts awoken. The sound of pipes, our war is calling. Like thunderous waves, our duty is falling. Stand tall, together we fight, with courage found in every breath. We'll fight like lions, defy our death. In unity our hearts shall sing the legacy of warriors through every reign. With battle cries we forge our fate, in fields of valor we elevate. As shadows loom, our spirits gleam. Brothers in arms, we are the dream. Fearless, we take the night, with courage found in every breath. We'll fight like lions, defy our death. In unity, our hearts shall sing the legacy of warriors through every reign. As dawn breaks, we know our name.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Friday edition live of Into the Red Rabbit Hole. I'm Nighthawk, your host, and we have Eric waiting patiently for me to turn his microphone on, or have him turn his microphone on. But we're going to get through the disclaimer and some hellos and thank yous and all that. And then we're going to start. Hopefully, Dennis will be joining us soon. I know he just got done with a podcast, or maybe still doing it. But we'll see. It will be great to have him on again, like old times. So, and the topic tonight is a very interesting topic, guys. And we've covered this subject matter, I believe, at least a half a dozen times in the last, 4 or 5 years that we've been on a podcast. So, it's going to be a good one, though. I'm going to throw some curveballs at you guys and let you figure it out. I'm going to be picking your brains tonight, too. So Roxanne, Urso, Corey, Carl, everybody in the chat, Bounty, and everybody, get ready to have your brains picked, okay? So that being said, the disclaimer is this channel may use some copyrighted material without specific authorization of the owner, but contends that it falls under the fair use, which is the Copyright Act of 1976. Nighthawk High Strange, this podcast channel, and all the podcasts on the channel declare fair use of any and all content, including the music, to be used for purposes such as criticism, commentary, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, research, parody, and let's not forget the entertainment value. Excuse me while I hiccup. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. And yes, I'm already on my second cup of coffee for tonight's podcast, so please bear with me. I'm going to be caffeine high, let me tell you. It's going to take me hours to come down from this one, I think, because I mixed 2 coffees together tonight with my regular, and I probably shouldn't have done that. Anyways, let me go over here and say hello to everybody. And bring Eric in here. He can go ahead and unmute his microphone if he wants. See, that is weird.
Are you not entertained?
Yeah. This is just weird. Wizard, good to see you in here. Bounty, good to see you. And Carl and Candy, good to see you. Ida, good to see you. Boy, it's really good to see Wizard in here again. I haven't seen Wizard in here in a while. All right. Urso, good to see you. Tanya, good to see you. Okay. Of course, Corey and Roxanne, good to see you guys. And there's that fluffy guy. Michelle, good to see you. And let's see. Monisha, good to see you in here. All right. Let me see. We can't forget Carl. We definitely can't forget Carl. In fact, if Dennis can't make it for some reason, technology wise, those who know Lene, she just texted and are asking for. Oh boy! All right, I wonder what happened. Definitely, if we all know Lene Perkins, if she's asking for prayers, so let's please lift her up in our prayers. If you would, please. Demario, good to see you. All right, let's see here. I think that's everybody. Yeah, it was pouring down here, or so hard I felt it was going to come through the metal roof. I mean, it was that hard. David, good to see you. Hopefully, Melissa's here too. Joanne, good to see you. We're going to talk about some things tonight, and I'm going to pop some. I'm going to get the conversation started, and if I need to, Jason, good to see you. If I need to, I'll put a link in the chat for Dr. Dennis Carroll to come on. I sent him the link in Messenger. So crossing fingers. Messenger, I don't know if it messed up for anybody today, but it was messing up for me. It took like 10 or 15 minutes to even get a message out on Messenger today. It was weird. So okay. Well, stomach problems are nothing to mess with. I mean, it could be anything really. And to tell you the truth, as rampant as the C word is, we should definitely be praying for Lene, okay? Because we don't want it to be the C word. One of the big things I noticed nowadays is gastral cancer is a big thing nowadays. And Caleb, good to see you in here, bro. And Tanya, good to see you. And Jason, good to see you. Anyways, the subject tonight, I listed it as gates and angels. And I want to tell you tonight, it's going to be a little weird, okay? Well, you all know me; it's going to be weird anyways, so that goes without saying. But plus, I'm having difficulty trying to catch my breath when I talk. Been that way all day too. Anyways, I've done a lot of investigating and stuff over my years and researching over my years. And it seems to me like, certain elements of today's life has been influenced a lot lately by the supernatural. Now, I'm not saying it's demonic, but I'm saying it's demonic. I'm not saying it's angelic, but I'm saying it's angelic. I'm not saying that it's divine or demented, because it could be both, okay? River, good to see you in here. And it's just one thing after another that seems like people, I mean, take like Lene tonight, we're asking for prayers, okay? There are more and more people having to do that. And, Stuart, good to see you, man. Good to have you in here. By the way, Stuart, thank you for that advice on the binders. You and the one other person told me about the ivermectin horse medicine, So, and my 200-pound jackass is going to follow it to a T. So, I don't own a horse. I own a jackass. Sorry. That's what's in my stable. Anyways, that being said, um, the whole angel and demon thing. How many of you know of a 39-year-old rapper by the name of Kevin Gates, whose real name is Kevin Jerome Gilliard, an American rapper, songwriter, and singer and entrepreneur from the Baton Rouge area. Baton Rouge, imagine that. The voodoo capital of America. Orleans and Baton Rouge.
Nolans, baby. We all did that voodoo hoodoo.
Yeah. Well, he came on several interviews. Yeah, I know I'm unstable. Thank you for bringing that up, Stuart. Anyways, he came on a lot of interviews lately on podcasts and stuff, and on some radio programs too. That oh yeah, not good, Carl. Well, this guy Kevin Gates is his name. I guess it's his stage name. But he is a pretty well-known rapper, songwriter, and singer in from the Baton Rouge area, and he has literally professed that he is the angel of fear. Now think about that. He has come out and professed to live audiences that he is the angel of fear. Now we all know who the angel of fear is in the Bible, in the biblical references, and in some of the missing apocrypha. It is Samael. Okay, and to me, I don't believe he's the angel of fear. Don't get me wrong. Okay, I don't believe he's angelic in any way, shape, or form if he's saying stuff like that. But we all know how heavily demonically influenced the music industry is. Okay. And when you name yourself Gates and you call yourself an angel, could that be a little information being leaked out about certain gates that we see in the sky and certain objects coming through those gates that we see in the sky from another realm? You call it a dimension. People call it the veil. We all know what I call it. I call it the heavens because that's the way it's described in all the ancient texts. Okay. The heavens, plural, not singular, plural. Okay. And in order for me to even say that, it says a lot. Okay. Because I've been studying it a lot. I have a theory with, and Bounty knows, because we've discussed it here in the chat, that my theory about the rainbows, whenever you see the rainbows, that is a signal from the Creator, the real God of this world, showing us the different levels that we have to go through. Okay. And the best way to show it is an example like this. Okay. Now, if you look at this diagram, it shows you the different levels. And it also shows you, guess where the moon and the sun is? Now, this is biblical references only, okay? What you're seeing right here. The throne of God on above the ninth heaven, okay? Now, if you think about it, each color represented there could represent the color of a rainbow. And it could show you the different veils, thin veils between each realm. And the realms above us, we don't have the capability of hearing and seeing. Okay. So now that this stuff is bleeding through the gates, okay, we're having a lot more supernatural activity. Okay. Plain and simple. Thank you, Roxanne. Now, I've talked before about the entity that spoke to me several times through the living room window, okay, and peeped his head through the window that I actually have covered up and soundproofed for the podcast room. So, and I mean, you can't even get any light through there or sound really, but poked his head through the other night when we were on.
Hello.
Hey, Dennis.
Hey, Dennis.
Hello. What's going on?
Oh, we're just going through. Yep, just going through and talking about some of the stuff that I've been through lately with this being that's been talking to me. And Dennis, you and I talk a lot, in Messenger and stuff, and we've known each other for a long time now, and we both have such a vast background in dealing with certain things and certain aspects of the supernatural. And you are probably one of the most people that I respect enough to listen to and value your opinion. Okay. You, Eric, and a few others are definitely part of my I don't want to offend anybody, but part of my inner circle of confidants and knowledgeable people that can help me figure things out when I can't on my own. But as we were talking earlier today, you had mentioned that yesterday that you had an encounter with the same type of a being that I'm having the encounters with. And I want to make it perfectly clear to everybody tonight, right now, that the being that I'm describing, now this is just a rough draft of what it looked like. Okay. It had red hair. It had a grin that its facial grin never changed. Even when it was talking to me, like the story of the grinning man that stopped the vacuum cleaner salesman in West Virginia the one time that came out of a UFO. Okay, the same kind of grin. Okay, and the same kind of speaking ability, like a mind speak. Okay, his mouth did not move at all. Okay, so I want to make that very clear. But and what he has been disclosing to me was the fact that he is considered a controller, a being that is ultimately shifting the, I don't know if shifting the realities is a good word for humanity, or shifting the actual physical history and guidance of humanity, but he has something to do with that. Okay. And I would really love to hear your opinion on it, and what your encounters were with this kind of a being, Dennis, and then the same with Eric, if that's possible. And I'm just going to shut up for about 10 minutes and let you guys talk so I can catch my breath. Okay.
Well, Eric, when you deal with this type of a thing, this type of a being, you got to remember one thing: these are lying spirits. Okay, I don't trust anything they will tell you or say to you. Most of the time, you can't. That's just the way. That's just that's the realization you have when dealing with these things. He can call himself a controller. He can call himself whatever he wants to. He can present himself as this clown, Joker looking thing. This is just another way that they do things. Okay. They come at you different ways. I've said this before in the past. Demonic attacks can be very much like a sidewinder. You run into a sidewinder, you know how they come at you. They come at you sideways, and you have to keep turning towards them. You can't trust. And that's the way these things work. That's just the way they approach you. And they can use, I have known this for a fact, without a doubt. They can take images from your subconscious mind and use them against you. Okay. Now, I'm not going to say they can absolutely read the most private thoughts of a man or a woman. I don't think they can do that as well, but I think they can feel. They're very super, super sensitive beings. Okay. And they can pick up on this stuff. They know. It's like that old saying, they know what scares you, or they know what pushes your button, and they know how to pull your chain. Okay. We got to remember that and never lose sight of that. The being that I encountered, it's very hard for me to talk about this because it was very traumatic, and the way it attacked me. I've never been, I've been attacked many times in the past.
Right.
These, I call them lower level demons. They're nothing compared to some of these guys. And I think what you're dealing with here may not be a lower level. I think he may be a little higher up on the ladder. I think it may be very much like a fallen type angel. Okay. Now the fallen angels are definitely in charge of the demons. They work for them. They work together for other things they don't do. But their attacks are somewhat different than demonic attacks, pure out demonic attacks. Most of the time, fallen angels attack you mentally, and they play these games with your mind. You know what I'm saying? That's just the way that's their modus operandi, you might say. And that's what leads me to believe because that's what I encountered that night. And let me say this about the being I encountered. I'll tell you real quick. Even as a writer, I cannot describe this thing to you. Okay. I have tried to do it before. It was very traumatic the way it attacked me. It took me weeks to get over this. Okay. Physically, mentally, and spiritually. Okay. But this thing appeared in this house I'm in right here one night in the room next to me. It was late at night. It was probably about 3 in, somewhere around there, 2:30, 3 in. I've been up studying. I've been deep in research, doing some of that. And it was demonic stuff that I was looking at. It was it was definitely there. And I was researching the case. I have a lot of consultation cases. And I was researching something like that. And I just kind of, I finally said, well, I'm going to give it up for the night. I stood up and I actually had I had a knife in my hand, which is a letter opener, and I had moved it out of the way or something. And I was about to put it down when I heard something off to my left. Now, without a doubt that I cleanse this house constantly. I put a ward over this house. You know what a ward is. I put a ward over this house, and for this thing to penetrate that, it must have been very, very, very strong. In other words,
very powerful. Yep.
And I think that you have protected yourself that way, William, to the point where I feel that this was a very strong thing that attacked and approached you this way. Okay. Although it didn't get in your house, it was outside, very close to you. Okay. And communicating with you. That's the main. Well, off to my left, I heard this noise. So I kind of look in the next room and I see something missing. All of a sudden, and here's what happened. The room started getting cold. I could feel it perceptibly get cold, okay? And I'm watching, and I look in the next room, and it's like a mist in there, a very thin mist forming. And I'm standing there, I said, what the heck is this? And I'm standing there looking, I still got that knife in my hand. I'm standing there looking, I'm going, what is that? And the room's getting cold. I start to be, let me tell you how cold it got. I got to where I could start seeing my breath, okay? This was in summertime now, okay? And I was seeing my breath in here. And I'm going, what the heck is this? And this thing began to materialize. I won't go deep into that right now, but the thing that it looked like, it's very hard, it's traumatically hard for me to describe this way, but it wasn't so much what it looked like, and it looked like it was very reptilian looking to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
And it also, but it was changing, just like you said, it was changing its shape and shifting in front of me. And it was, for a moment, it would look kind of like a man, and for the next minute, it looked like a snake. Okay, that's about the only way I can say it. It wasn't a dragon looking thing or nothing. It wasn't a dinosaur. It looked like a snake. It even stuck its tongue. Its tongue was black. I remember seeing his tongue. His tongue was black. The skin on this thing was almost a black greenish color. Very weird looking. And here's the thing about it, they had a smell to it.
Yeah.
And the smell is what hit me first when I'm looking at this thing materializing like this. The room getting colder, the smell, it had that snake smell. You know what snakes smell like?
Yeah. Yep.
It had that overwhelming snaky smell to it.
Yep.
But also was something under it. Like, I'm going to say it was definitely the rotten egg smell, brimstone, sulfur, whatever you want to call it.
Like the smell of death.
Mm-hmm. And that's what hit me. That was very strong, very strong. And I knew what it was when I was looking at it. I knew exactly what I was looking at, you know. But I have run into demons before. I have encountered them face to face. I've had them blow their hot breath in my face. That's how close I've been to them. Mm-hmm. I had never encountered anything like this. But the main thing about all this, William, Eric, was the overwhelming, traumatically overwhelming feeling of evil coming off of this thing. It was so real, it was hurting me. It was pushing on me, bruising me, I'm going to say spiritually. It was that real, that strong, and that powerful. And it looked at me, and it was materializing, and the ceiling in my house is about 8 foot, and it was hitting the ceiling. And materializing, looking at me, and the eyes, I cannot describe. The eyes, they were like snakes, but yet they were human too. It was weird. Like I say, it was constantly shifting its reality, like.
Yep.
And it looked at me, and it kind of cocked its head. Now, when I had stood up, I want to say this. I had just said, and sometimes I thought to myself, you know, when you're alone, especially, you talk to yourself sometimes, you know. And when I had stood up from that desk, and not even thinking about anything like this, okay, I just said, you know, I wonder what that looks like. That's what I said out loud when I was doing some kind of research on what it was looking. I was reading something. I think it was about the orphan, you know. I was reading about that, and I said, I wonder what that looks like. Anyway, that's what happened, I think, was a reaction to what I see it, okay? And that thing cocks its head and looks at me, and like I'm saying, I'm getting this just ululating waves of evil. I have never felt evil like this before in my life.
Nausea.
And I never want to feel it again. Trust me, I don't ever want to have this ever happen again. Anyway, it cocked its head at me and looked at me and smiled. And it said, and this is what it said, and never spoke, and mouth never moved, but I heard it.
Okay? Exactly. Yeah.
Mouth never moved. It said, is this what you want to see? Is this what you want to see? Is this what you want to know? That's just what it was saying to me. And that's when I still had that knife in my hand. And it was just hitting me. I mean, it was hurting me. Okay. I mean, I've never been hurt like this before. And before I don't ever want to be in this situation again. Trust me, nobody would ever in their right mind wish anything like this. Okay. And I was not raising a demon. I wasn't doing anything like that. I had no intention of doing this. This was an all-out attack that I have never experienced before on that level about something.
Because you were actually you were contemplating something. Yeah, you were contemplating something, Dennis, that could actually protect you.
I raised that knife up like a cross towards it, and I said, "That's what I said. Get in the name and the blood of Jesus Christ. You get out of my presence right now. You get out of here right now." You know, and that thing laughed at me. Slowly began to dissipate until it was gone again. The room came back to normal temperature, and I'm shaking like a leaf. because it was just the trauma of it.
Yeah.
I have never ever faced anything. No, I want anybody to ever face anything like that. Okay.
Exactly.
And like
Exactly.
I said, I can't describe the face that well. That's as good as I can do it. I mean, it's hard to tell anybody when you see something like that, this molecularly changing on that kind of a reality level constantly. You can't describe it. It's hard to
Exactly.
describe. But it was the overwhelming feeling of evil.
Exactly. Yeah. The one thing.
That's what got me. Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing that I noticed with this being that was outside the window of the living room, the first time that I encountered it, it didn't come and stand in front of the window like I show in this picture. It wasn't standing upright like this. Okay. It literally it shifted in sideways and looked at me through the window sideways. In other
Mm-hmm.
words, it was literally its face was like my hand is right here to the screen looking at me. Okay. And then it shifted this way and stood there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that's when it started speaking to me without moving its mouth. And I didn't have any fear. I didn't fear it. Okay. Because I think it knew that I had an angelic, a divine protection around me and my family.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always tried to do that. You know,
I want to
through,
stress with mine. I want to stress with my thing. Okay, right quick. This
yeah,
was
go ahead.
not fear. This was not fear that I was feeling. This was evil, just pure
Right.
evil, and it was an emotional thing. You know what I'm saying? More that was the
Oh,
way it
yeah.
was attacking me emotionally. But I think what this thing was coming after you with was your mind.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you
Exactly.
why they do that. And I've studied something, and I began to study a lot about the techniques of not just the demonic, but the fallen angels as well. That's another thing we're contending with here, and we got to always keep sight on that. But they play with your mind.
Yep.
They are brilliantly the best, better than Einstein. They are brilliant geniuses of the universe. Okay, they know their stuff, and they have an overwhelming mind thing, and they want to touch your mind, play with it, touch your mind, and form that communication, which is the beginning. We always know that communication is the beginning of possession. That's the way they begin, and they always start. But
Yep.
here's the thing about it. Now listen very closely to what I'm about to say. And here's the thing we got to remember. Very, very important. Fallen angels don't possess you.
Exactly.
Demons do. Okay.
Exactly.
So
I'm glad you
they
said
have
that.
another route that they go about. Okay. They go through another route to control you. Okay.
Hmm.
They don't possess. Yeah.
Exactly. I'm glad you said that because that's exactly what I've learned too from my research and my interactions with the supernatural. Um, yeah, to a T. That your encounter and my encounter, the feeling that I had at the time, I was just sitting there on the couch and I was thinking to myself about, you know, about what happens when we leave this body. Okay. And I was thinking pretty heavily about that. And I think that's why it manifested itself in front of me there at the window. Um, and I do believe it picked the form that it chose to show itself because of something that had happened to me as a child in the past with a similar being, looking pale and with the red hair and the big grin and all that. It basically it looked like you said, it looked like the Joker, you know, and although it wasn't as white as the Joker, it was more of a flesh tone, pale. Um, but it took that form because of something that happened in my past with that same character through a supernatural entity. And I think it knew that if it presented itself in that form to me, that I wouldn't automatically get on the defensive and basically rebuke it in the blood of Jesus. So, I think it wanted me to hear it out. And
I think, William, let me interrupt you just a moment here, but I
yeah,
think
go ahead.
what helped you in this episode was it didn't come in your house. It didn't get it. There was some petition between you, whether it be a window or whatever. That helped you right there,
Mhm.
probably a lot. But let me tell you what this is, okay? He wasn't there to communicate you. He wasn't there to give you any knowledge. Or if he says he is, he's lying. Okay, put it that way. He wasn't there on that scale. This is a form of spiritual attack.
Uh,
That's what's
and
going on here.
what I call it is, I called it this the other day on the podcast that Eric and I covered, and that's the Nephilim mind virus. And I really do believe that the spirit of the Nephilim are also influencing factors of what's going on
But we
supernaturally
got to
too.
remember too the spirit of the Nephilim. They created the Nephilim. Okay, they are the
Exactly.
creators of the Nephilim. Well, if you want to call it creation, it's really more or less they manipulated stuff into doing that. But anyway, they're
An
responsible for it.
abomination.
They're the responsible parties. Put it that way. Anyway,
Yeah.
that spirit that you're talking about is fallen angel spirit. That's basically what he truly is and what he began with and how it operates on that way. But the thing about this is you got to remember when you encounter these in whatever form or whether they take you, this thing was showing you an image that you were familiar with. We all know what the Joker looks like or a clown looks like. We
Yep.
know that from childhood onward, And
Yep.
this thing they use images they use images against us that we are
Yep.
familiar with. That's always their other modus operandi on this. That's just the way they operate. They do that to get you off guard, to give you
Hmm.
something familiar to hook up with so they can use it. That's just like Annabelle we've talked about.
Yep.
They're going Raggedy Ann doll. They're using that,
Yep.
whatever the image is they need to do. And everybody is pretty well knows we know what clowns are, and a lot of people are scared of clowns. They know that scares people too, just like you and I have talked. You might remember shows we did in the past about the Slender Man,
Oh yeah.
and how that it was made up online, but now it is being used by the demonic.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly. And that's how they play. That's their gameplay. Their game book that they always go to is they mimic whatever mankind or humanity has a fear of. So
Yeah, and when you
feed off
come
that
against
fear.
things like these, and like I say, they can scare you. They can try to use fear on you too. Yeah, and some people succumb to that. But some of the old rascals like you and me, we don't go down with fear that much. Okay,
No.
but they know that too. They know that, so they come at us from other avenues.
Yep.
Okay, that's the way they operate, and we got to understand it. But here's the thing about any of this, and we must caution people about this is nothing funny. This is not a game. This is nothing to play around with. Okay, you don't play and you don't entertain these forces. You don't mess around with them. The main thing is to keep them away from you, and the only true way to do that is to maintain your armor of God against them.
Exactly.
You've got to maintain that armor. That's the only thing that's going to keep you in your faith in your armor against these things because they are very insidious. And like I said, they are absolute geniuses. They have been around for untold millions of years. They know more than you and I,
Yep.
William, will ever know in a single lifetime. Uh,
Exactly.
that's what we're up against. And that's why I warn people to be very, very cautious. But everything they tell you, you can't believe anything they tell you. You can't believe anything they say to you. I don't care what it is. They tell me the sky's blue. I'm not going to believe them because
Exactly. Yeah.
they're just a bunch of liars and they're out to deceive you. and
Yep.
play these mind games with you. And why is the number one thing about this mind game is to lead you away from the real truth,
Exactly.
which
Exactly.
they are enemies of.
Yep.
Enemies of truth and light.
And what gets me about this whole scenario, guys, is the fact that they have a certain part of humanity that's working in conjunction with them,
Oh,
that
yeah.
has literally bowed down and given themselves to
You're
this
always going to have
darkness.
sellouts.
Yeah.
You're always going to
So,
have
I think that's what you see what's going on with a lot of the politics and stuff around the world right now is you have the internal strife of good versus evil all around the world. And because of this evil influence of the fallen, it's getting to the point where, like I said about in the beginning of the podcast tonight with that rapper, um, Gates out of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, Dennis, but he came out and claimed to be the angel of fear. Now, as far as I know from my research and stuff, the angel of fear was Samael, and Samael was definitely nothing to be scoffed at and to ridicule and say that you are. And I don't believe this guy is Samael. I don't believe he is an angel to begin with. If anything, he's more of a dark spirit than anything. But
Well,
yeah,
here's the
you have
thing.
so
Let me
much
tell you this,
influence.
William, okay? And something, another thing we got to do is very important that we can't forget when dealing with these forces. They're not going to give you their name. They're not going to really tell you their name. What was the first thing Jesus did when he walked up to that demon there? And he asked him, "What's your name?" Why did,
Yep.
I had a lot of people ask, why did he do that?
Yep.
Because if you got their name, you got them. You got the power over them.
Yep.
Okay, they're
And
not
if I
going to give
recall,
you that power. They're not.
if I
Yeah, they're not
recall,
going to
he
be
if
honest with you
I
and tell you their real name. That's just like the one that they on that Emily Rose movie. Where he said, "What's your name?"
Mhm.
I'm Judas, and I'm so and so. I'm Hitler, and all. They're never going to give you their name. They're
Right.
smarter than that. They're not
And
stupid.
I've always been taught to ask them 3 times at least to give them your name, and on the third time, make it non-negotiable
And the
for
legend
them to
is,
give you your name.
the legend, William, Eric, is that King Solomon had their names supposedly. He
Mm-hmm.
learned their names and was able to get them to do things. Now that's a legend, whether that's true or not, but that's where you get a lot of the grimoires and stuff from, the Lesser Key of Solomon and all that stuff. Supposedly, there are keys in there that will get you to raise demons. You do not want to do that, folks. You do not want to raise demons. You don't want any form or fashion. Trust me, you don't want to do that. But there's a question about the difference now. I believe without a doubt that there are probably alien forces in league with some of these fallen angels. I believe without a doubt that there is some connection with that going on, and they're part of their plan as well. Because you got to remember the original aliens. Who are they? Fallen angels. They are the original
Exactly.
aliens. That's who they
Exactly.
are. When
And
you,
if I can,
yeah,
if
and
I
you
can
know that
go a little bit further with that,
and you
if I
know
can
they've
go a
got
little bit further,
connection. They've
yeah,
connected with other aliens out there. You know that. That's without a doubt what's going on with that too. So
right. And the
that's where I think a lot of your
transhumanism
reptilians
too.
come in. Mhm.
Yeah, take for instance the transhumanism with the AI and the robotics, and being combined with humans. I believe that is purely a
Well,
demonic
that
type of a way of getting to
all of that
humanity
is
too.
weird, William. That is part of the fallen angel angelic plan. Okay, that's part of the plan from mankind's very beginning, and it's still ongoing today. The super soldier thing is part of it. The hibernization of animals and creation of cryptids and all that's part of it. It goes very deep and very far ranging, this plan. But the main plan is to corrupt humanity and destroy it. That's this main goal in all of it. And they're going to do it by different, like I said, different avenues. They're going to do it in different ways. We know that's what they're up to. But here's one thing we got to remember
Exactly.
about all of this. And there are other forces in league with them, definitely. Like you said, there's sellouts of humanity There's always going to be Benedict Arnolds and everything, no matter which way you look at it, because they think they're in it for the money or the fame or whatever it is they want, or immortality is one of the main things that they're concerned with. That's what they want more than anything else. Because all the money in the world and all the power ain't going to do you no good if you got to die and leave it. So they want to be gods. These are little wannabe gods. That's what they all are. And that's their plan. That's their plan, to be the gods of this world and to take over everything and get rid of us in the process. But we got to also remember that there are people definitely in bed with these forces, helping them out. And there are probably intergalactic beings as well involved, and interdimensional beings involved in all of this. It's a far bigger plot than we realize. But here's one more thing we got to think about tonight. You and I, none of us are going to solve this problem.
No.
None of us have the power to stop these forces except in our own lives. Okay, God's going to have to be the one that takes care of all this stuff. Okay, and I'm not worried about it because He's the one that's going to take care of it. But when it comes down to our personal lives, we're the ones that have to help fight that battle. Those are the battles. And when they do this about humanism, this dehumanizing people, they're going to turn you into the technology. They're going to assimilate you into it, take away your humanity, because once you no longer have your humanity, you no longer have a soul.
Yep, exactly. And that's, a lot of the stuff that I post online on social media has a lot to address about that too, because they not only want your soul, but they want the part of humanity that has sided with them to get their parts out of humanity, from the recycling process that they're doing.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm a firm believer that that's where the organ harvesting comes from. That's where the bone dust harvesting comes from, and and all that. I think and the adrenochrome. I believe it's all connected.
We're nothing but cattle to them, William.
Exactly.
We're cattle. They feed off us. They use us, abuse us, and then get rid of us. That's the way they operate. They've always been operated that way.
Exactly.
That's why people have warned you down over the years, you not to play around with demons or fallen angels, because they're out for one thing and one thing only: use you and get rid of you. That's what they're all about. You can bank on that. You can take it to the bank, because that's what they are.
Yep.
But it's the insidious different ways that they come about it we have to be on guard against.
Yep.
In our lives.
Exactly.
We've got to understand and operate from the fact of having more light in us than darkness.
Exactly. And you got to understand, I think humanity needs to start to learn to read the signs too, because just as much as the demonic and the evil aspect of the supernatural is trying to influence humanity, we also have to remember that there's the light, that there's God and the angels and stuff from that protect us from the evil, and try to show us through signs, through that's why the rainbow is, I believe, is such a big prevalent sign in the in the kingdom of God, because it shows the way out. It literally shows us the way out to go through the heavens. Okay. And I just
we need to know
we just need to know to read the signs.
We need to know what our card says. Is it the kingdom of light or the kingdom of darkness? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
We need to make that choice. And if you have this thing approach you again, you know what to do. You know what you're going to have to do. But, and I would say this, you know about this. I don't have to tell you, but I'm telling this to everybody listening tonight. If these things approach you, don't play with them. Don't talk to them. Don't communicate with them. Don't play any games with them, okay? Just get rid of them. That's the main thing. Get rid of them. Get them away from you. And the blood of Jesus is the only way to do that, folks.
Exactly. I agree 150%.
I've been into situations where the clients told me this is paranormal. And like Jessica and I was talking about on my show Sunday, is I always go in and do an initial investigation. I feel the energy of the place. The energy is going to tell me, am I dealing with something paranormal, supernatural, or what? And depends on the situation. A lot of times with demons, the
Well,
reason
there
why they
are a
don't want to
lot.
give me
A
their
lot of
name
these
is
things. Eric, a lot of these things feed off of energy. They are energy things.
exactly.
They also feed off the essence of life. I have run into in my career many vampire spirits. There are vampire spirits that feed off of your soul,
Oh
your
yeah.
energy, your life essence. They do that too. Yeah, they use it. It's like I said, just like cattle. Look at all the things that mankind once upon a time. We'll take the Native Americans and the buffalo. They used every piece of that buffalo. Okay, nothing went to waste. Every piece you did something with it, no matter what it was. Uh,
Yep.
and that's the way you do your cattle. Okay, that's the way you do your cattle, and that's the way they do us. These
Yep.
things are doing us that way too. Okay, and they use this, and there are things out there, and I have seen an increase in this recently, and I want to warn people about this. Be very careful who you touch. I'm talking about physically touch, or who you let physically touch you, or who you let get into your spiritual boundaries. You know, you have a personal space. God gave you a personal space for a reason. That's a
Which is
spiritual
that energy
boundary.
field that we talk about
Yeah,
all the time,
yeah.
folks.
And you know what? He give animals have that, by the way, too. Everything is created
Yep.
with this thing, okay? They've even found that plants and trees have this kind of a thing going on, okay?
Yep.
Every living thing has this thing because that's the way your creator made you. Be very, very, very careful what and who you let into that space. Because once they penetrate, just like this thing we were talking about, it was on the other side of your window, and that's a good thing. Because you would not want to feel it 100% head on, you know, raw like
And
that.
I've,
Okay, you know what I'm
you know,
saying?
I've, yeah, growing up. I mean, through what I went through growing up as a child and stuff, and as a teenager and a young adult, with what I went through with the ceremonies and stuff with the dark Native American magic, with a
Mm-hmm.
K. Um, I know I can speak volumes on what possession feels like, and giving over that control to such an evil type of a supernatural being. And I've dealt with like Dennis, and I believe Eric has too in the past. We've all dealt with that stronger than your average animal demonic spirit. Okay. um you know Especially Dennis and I know for a fact we've dealt with them a lot, from talking with Dennis and knowing Dennis for so long. So when we talk about the dangers that are involved in this, it's far above anything humanity can even comprehend. I have had these things literally pick me physically up and lift me several feet off the ground
Mm.
in ceremony, okay, and twist and contort me into certain things that my human body would not be able to do without that deep, dark transformation, I guess is the only way to describe it. Okay.
I got
So,
a bad shoulder. I got a bad shoulder right now for being picked up and thrown down a set of stairs. Okay, I
mm,
know how that can be. These things are very real, and it's another thing we need to caution people about. And I hear a lot about this. Old dog man talks to me, or Bigfoot talks to me on mind. And be very, very, very careful of anything that touches your mind, because
exactly.
that is the ultimate invasion of your personal space.
And
Okay,
that's the key.
yeah.
That's the key that they'll use to get into you, to get to you.
Hmm. Absolutely. And that's dangerous. And I hear people say, "Oh, I talked to them and I did this." That is not good. That is not good at all. Who do you know who you're really, really talking to? You remember a story I used to tell you about that psychic one time. And she come to me and said, "Well, you need to do this, you need to do that." I said, "Why do I need to do that?" She said, "Well, my spirit guide told me that." I said, "Well, who is your spirit guide?" And she said, "Well, it's my spirit guide." I said, "Well, who told you it was your spirit guide?" "My spirit guide told me that." You can't believe everything you're being told, folks. That's just the way these things operate. They get you so screwed up in your mind when they play these games on you, you will end up believing anything if you're not careful. You know? But when you connect with these things, when you talk to them, when you make that connection, who do you know what you're really talking to out there? You really don't know who's on the other end of the line.
All right, I'm going to say this once to the chat. I'm noticing some not so friendly conversations going on in the chat. I don't care what your differences are religiously, spiritually. I don't care. I don't give a rat's ass. Okay. I don't care if you're Muslim, if you're Christian, whatever you are in the chat, you will be respectful. And if you can't be respectful, I will shut you down. Plain and simple. I don't screw around. And you're going to learn that. If you're not a regular person in the chat, you're not part of the family, you better be respectful or I will get rid of you. Is that clear? My moderators have permission to ban whoever they want from this channel, and so does Eric. So keep that in mind. Thank you, Dennis. I'm sorry. I had to say that.
Once in a while.
I had to say that. Sorry, Eric. I didn't mean to step on you either, but I had to say that.
Nope. I was trying to handle it without interrupting you guys. That's why I was doing it in chat. So,
but yeah, definitely.
What I was saying,
we have to be very careful how we deal with these forces because they, like I said, they are incredibly smart, incredibly intelligent, and this is a God. I call it the God problem. God's the only one that's going to solve this problem. But we must be careful with our personal battles with these things. Exactly. That's the main thing. And when they approach us like this, however they may approach us, we got to be on guard, definitely, constantly.
Exactly.
And one of the reasons why they don't want to tell your name is as soon as you know your name, you take the power away from them. And that's one of the key things about not saying the name, which you have to, under the protection and the blood and the love of Yahuwah and Yeshua, to get the name. You, as a human, can't do it yourself. You have to do it under their authority. And that's the key thing. Like when my pastor that I used to have was teaching me how to deal with this, he says, that it's not necessarily your fear that you're feeling, it's theirs because they know what you can do. But the key thing is like you said, Dennis, you have to be under the blood. You have to use the armor and the sword of Yahuwah.
Absolutely. I think Caleb Yates is talking to these things like trying to talk to a tiger by saying, "Hey, kitty, you'll find out 600 pounds on the carry." Absolutely. I would rather play with rattlesnakes. At least you know where you stand with rattlesnakes. You know what I mean?
And I've been in situations where homes had a demonic entity. And I can tell you now, you can't get rid of that thing right off the bat. It takes multiple, sometimes hundreds of different times of going in there to get this thing out. And 99% of the time when I've ran into that situation was because somebody invited it in. And when you invite it in, it seems to me, I could be wrong, but it seems to me that it's harder to get rid of it when you invite them in.
Oh, yeah. And, we see a lot of this going on nowadays with all these so-called entertainment we have, on TV and all these different concerts and all that. They're really nothing but thinly veiled rituals. Why are they doing this? Because this raises their cone of power, and they're using us that way too. Okay, so if we watch unknowingly, we are participating, and it's helping them out and helping them raise their cone of power. We need to be very careful about that too. So we have to be very careful what we let into our lives, who we let into our lives, and all that goes with it, and the situations that we let into our lives. We have to be very, very careful with this because these things are working very. It's just like this. If they come out like they did you, William, or like they have done me in the past, and all these other things that have happened to other people, if they will come out like that, how much more are they doing in the background, in the shadows, in the dark behind your back? You know
Amen.
what I'm
Yep.
saying? That's the way that
Exactly.
goes. And that's the most dangerous part. Let me put it this way: I've had this happen in the woods a lot. I run into bears. Okay, I'd rather know where the bear's at than to not know where he's at. Okay, put it that way. I'd rather know where he's at, absolutely all the time. And when they get quiet and you don't see them, that's when you better worry. That's when you got to start worrying. You know.
Exactly. So I'm just trying to keep a close eye on the chat, guys. You guys can go ahead and continue.
Now, here's another thing, though, and something else we need to talk about tonight, and that is real angels. Okay, the real angels, not the fallen angels. Let me say something about them. Okay, and people have misinterpreted this all to heaven. You do not pray to angels. Angels do not stand between you and God. You don't pray to angels. You don't have angel guides. If something tells you, if something comes up and tells you tonight, I'm your angel spirit guide, they're lying to you, folks. That's not what angels do. You're
Yeah.
talking to something that's lying, okay? That's not true. Angels are not spirit guides. They are servants of mankind. They are protectors of mankind. They are guardians, but they are not guides. There is only one guide in this universe that you need to concern yourself with, and that is the Holy Spirit of God.
Exactly.
Only the Holy Spirit of God. We got to never lose sight of that. It's very important.
Now, how do you
And that's
feel about the actual some of the religions that do pray to saints and stuff? What's your feeling on that?
Well, that I'm not a big fan of the Catholic Church. You know that. And
Right.
they'll probably you'll never see me play golf with the Pope. Okay, definitely not. But anyway, uh, they have taken and assimilated gods and goddesses into certain religions and replaced them with just the names of saints. That's what they've done, basically. God says very specifically in the Bible, you pray to God. You go through Jesus. Jesus is your moderator. He is your mediator. He's your lawyer. Stands at your right side. He is the bridge. He said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. Okay. And I have had Islamic people say to my face, Jesus Christ is not the Son of God. Your Bible is lying. Okay. A lot of people believe that, but they believe wrong, my friends. Trust me, because that's a very plain statement there that he made. And if you have a problem with that, you got a big problem. Okay. But that's the only way you get to God. Okay. And that's how you communicate with God. He's your bridge. He's the bridge that's there for that. And he gave his life for that.
What's your and what's everybody's thoughts on the fact that a lot of these influential people in the music industry and Hollywood are coming forward and claiming to be something that they're obviously not, but yet it is part of being controlled by the dark, like this rapper, this rapper Gates out of Baton Rouge that I described in the beginning of the podcast, claiming that he is the angel of fear. And there's several of them that talk about drinking the juice, and they
God
sold
is
their
not fear.
souls, and so
God is not fear. God says he doesn't want you to have a spirit of fear. He wants you to have
exactly.
the spirit of a sound mind. Okay, that's not God. if somebody tells you something like that. That's why the Bible specifically tells us, warns us, that we must always be on guard and test these spirits against His word, definitely to understand what's going on. But we got to remember also that when He talks about the fear of God, it's mostly talking about the respect of God here. You don't go around shaking in your boots, scared to death God's going to do anything to you. What you do is you go around respecting God. That means that's sort of like a fear. That was in the old days what they meant by a lot of fear in that way. Okay, in that context, I have to explain that to a lot of people because they get that wrong. But the main thing you got to remember about God, there is no one, and God doesn't want this, no one to stand between you and Him. And that includes an angel, that includes a minister, that includes anybody. You don't pray to the Pope. You don't pray to anybody else but God. That's the only way that works. And if you're going some other route, then you're probably at a dead end, my friend. That's probably where you're at.
Exactly.
It's very plainly laid out. It tells you that they talk to dark when the dark is done with them, and they screw up headlines, follow the Hollywood stars. I'm going to tell you something about all these Hollywood stars, okay? Most of them, I'm afraid, are lost people trying to find their way, and they're all looking, like that old country song, looking for love in all the wrong places. They're looking for hope in all the wrong places, okay? That's just the way they are. And some of them have unfortunately made contracts and deals for some of
Yep.
the things that they've done. And
Yeah, I was just reading what Average Joe said right there in the chat. That's a very, very good thing, Average Joe. That's a very good comment about Lucifer. That is very true. So yes, there
he
is
was
a
a choir. He
there's
was
a very, very
actually
heavy evil
Lucifer was
influence.
actually the choir master. Yeah. He
Exactly.
knows the value of entertainment and media because they are his number one tools that he uses
Exactly.
in this world to get the things he does to corrupt humanity the way they want to corrupt it. It's something else you got to remember too. And I've been studying a lot lately about some of the things that Jesus said about the end times, and I believe without a doubt we have entered into the last days here. We definitely have. But he said something very interesting, and I think we need to understand that. And that is, he said, as it was, of course, in the days of Noah, so shall it be in the coming of the Son of Man. And he said, they will have a form of godliness, but deny the power thereof. What's he saying here? They will have a form of godliness, but deny the power thereof. In other words, everybody that comes up to you says God, 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 ain't necessarily talking about the God you think he's talking about.
Exactly.
It'd
Yep.
be somebody completely different, folks.
Yep.
And what was that show I used to watch? It used to be a show come on TV. Remember that Touched by an Angel? Remember that? Remember Touched by an Angel?
Yeah. Yep.
It was something that really bugged me about that show. Okay, it was all lovey-dovey, good, feel-good stories. They talk God, 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 but never one time did they ever, not single one time, did they ever mention the name Jesus Christ.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
Well, William and I has covered this
Hollywood.
before. When Jesus was in the desert, when Yeshua was in the desert, and he was confronted by Lucifer, he told Lucifer, "You're not only a prince of this world, but you're a god of this world." So when
He's
people
a
are
God
saying
of this
God, who are
world.
they
Yeah,
talking to? Yeah,
he's
who
the
are they
God.
talking to? Are you talking about Lucifer,
That,
or are you talking about Yahuwah?
that right there is why Jesus said this about Satan. He is a liar, a thief, and a murderer. That's what
Yep.
he is. What do you mean by thief? He stole this world away from
Yep.
God
He did.
and
Yep.
everything in it. He stole it. He will steal what wonderful things God has in store for you away from you if you let him. He is a thief,
Exactly. Exactly.
a
And
liar, and a
I've been,
murderer. That means he will destroy. When he gets you right where he wants you, he'll kill your hope. And
yep.
that's the way he
And that's
works.
the whole belief of the Gnostic. The Gnostic belief is the fact that this world was stolen by Lucifer, or by what they call Lucifer as the demiurge. And I've found that and I've correlated a lot of the canyon native
Well, you have to be
drawings and
very
stuff,
careful.
and
You have to
and
be very
and
careful with the. You have to be
and
very
and
careful with the Gnostics. You got to be very
right,
careful with the Gnostics because they embraced a lot of truths that were not true. Okay,
exactly,
they
exactly.
took some truths
But
like the Luciferians
there
and
are
all
some
them.
correlations that you can make though with the fact that the native people, the indigenous people of this land, my ancestors put warning signs on the side of canyon walls and inside caves and stuff. All the artwork making descriptive characters of the evil entities,
Of
and
devils.
even the gateways
They
that
were
they
devil
use.
entities, without
Exactly,
doubt.
exactly.
Because I've seen them. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna tell you what. Everybody knows that. Every culture you go to, William, worldwide, they talk about demons and devils. Okay. Why is that? Because they encountered these things. They've run into them. They've met them before. I've read many stories of the old chiefs and medicine men that talked about these evil spirits that they would encounter. And the evil spirits, there are a lot of indigenous people's stories of them fighting these evil spirits, actually doing warfare and battles with them,
Well, Spearfinger's a
physical
good
battles.
one. Yeah,
Hmm.
Spearfinger's a good one too for that, for the dark demonic part of it, as far as legends go.
Hmm.
I don't know if you know what Spearfinger is, but she is a representation of the demonic, plain and simple, through native lore. And some of the stuff that you even said, and Eric said in the beginning of the podcast about them touching you, um, has a lot to play into the Spearfinger legend. If she touches you in any way, shape, or form, she has more of a
Hmm.
manipulative power over you. And I
And you
do
know what?
believe that that is a
The
demonic form.
Bible teaches you if you pray for somebody, what do? You lay hands on them.
Yeah,
Touching is a very important thing, but it can be done for bad as well. That's the problem. It can be good or it can be bad, just like everything else in this universe. It can be used. You can build a house with a hammer or murder somebody with it. I mean, it just depends
yep,
on what your intention is with it. But we got to remember that when you invade somebody's personal space, you should have a spiritual barometer that goes off in you, just
yep,
like you did when
exactly.
that thing approached your window.
Yep,
Your spiritual barometer went off. Your alarm went off. The red flags went up.
yep.
You
And
know.
if they can assume that they have the ability to influence you or I or Eric in any way, shape, and form, as much as we have the skills to protect ourselves and the knowledge that we have over the years, just think what they can do to somebody that, say, is an atheist, you know.
Oh yeah. Well, of course. You know, I'll never will forget one time I was going into a place and this house had a very bad demonic infestation in this house. And there was a young girl with this team. I used to mentor a lot of teams over the years. Young girl with this team, and I said, "Now look, we got to be prepared. We're going to walk into this house, and there are some demonic activity going on in this house." And she says, "What? What are you talking about? I don't believe in demons." I said, "What
They believe
are
in
you
you.
doing here? What are you doing here if you don't believe in demons?" She said, "I don't believe in demons." I said, "Well, they believe in you, and if you go in there, they'll probably eat you up alive."
Mm-hmm.
I sent her home. I
Well,
said, "You can't do that. You can't go in there like that. I'm not going to be responsible for you." I
Yep.
had a guy one time, and I might have told you about this, William. It was the freakiest thing, Eric. I might have told you about it too. I don't know. If I repeat myself, I'm old. I get to do that because you probably need to hear it twice. Okay. Anyway, the whole thing is this guy. He was taunting these demons in his house with me, and I told him, I said, "Don't do that, because don't challenge them. They will take you up on it." You know. Sure enough, they flattened this guy. They hit him emotionally. I had to drag that guy out of that house, get him way up this long driveway, and start praying for him. And about the time I got through, every dog in that neighborhood started howling. And listen, what He never ever walked back in the house to investigate those things again. He was done with it. He found out it was real
Mm-hmm.
the hard way.
Exactly.
Well, you also got to consider one thing. Yahuwah says we have the power of life and death in our tongue. So when you're speaking to somebody, you're spell casting. You have to be very, very mindful of how you speak to someone.
Absolutely. You know, words are power. Words
Mhm.
are power for things, good or bad. And that's what a curse. Why we call them curse words? You're cursing
Mhm.
someone. You're wishing bad on somebody. When you cut them out, that's what you're doing. You're cursing those people. That's why it's called that. Look at the very beginning of the foundations of this whole universe. God spoke it into being. He didn't have an erector set. He didn't
Yeah.
push a button. He spoke it into
Yep.
being. There is
Exactly.
power in words, folks, and we have to
Yep.
be very careful with the words that we use and the way we use them. We may have to give an account for those words definitely one day. But
I'm
they're very
going to.
powerful.
Yeah.
And I have,
And
I'll tell you what, I had a black warlock walk up to me one time, right in my face, and say, "I curse you to death right now." He blew gopher dust in my face, okay? Gopher dust right in my face, and I curse you to death right now. I laughed at him. I said, "No, well, you know, you do what you want, but greater is he who is in me than he who is in the world." And I'm
exactly.
still here. He's not, by the way.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
But I'm gonna tell you something. When you
Yeah.
curse somebody, there's a price for it, because you're gonna get some of it back, no matter
Mhm.
what you do.
Well, it's like William
Exactly.
and I
Yeah.
has talked about several times. He's dabbled in dark arts. I've had family that was in the dark arts. And one of the reasons why I never got in it is because I've seen what happens to the people who dabble in that stuff. Your
Mm.
life is short. It's miserable. Bad things freaking happen. Demons collect when they lend you that supposedly lend you that power. They
You
do a
go,
little
that
bit, but not to the degree you think. But
that right
they
there.
do exact the price.
That right there is the
Yep.
biggest
Exactly.
difference. The biggest difference between God and Satan. God never charges you for a single thing, but
Exactly.
Satan always charges you something. You're gonna pay a price, whatever it may be. You're gonna charge a price.
Yep.
Um,
Well,
We
I
have a
gotta say, this has definitely been informative for everybody. I hope everybody's getting something out of this.
we have a
I
question
probably
from
had my
Mercy.
phone turned off. I don't know. Let me decline.
Eric and Nighthawk, have you heard
Sure,
kids
shut up in a
speaking of
minute.
Slender Man? Yeah, that's been
There we go.
around for a while, actually.
I'm sorry about that. I thought it was off. Anyway, that's probably Satan calling now. He's calling in.
Uh,
Cause I bad mouthed him, I guess.
Mhm.
You don't like it when you bad mouth him.
all right. Well, anybody in the chat got a question for Eric or Dennis or myself tonight, other than what was just put up there? Now's the time to ask. Trust me, folks, because very seldom will we be able to get us three together. But we always have an open invitation for Dennis and Eric to come together with me on this podcast. Always. So, and the wealth of knowledge that you can gain is phenomenal. So, if anybody has anything as far as a question, please don't hesitate to ask. Thank you, Roxanne. Yes.
Good night, Woo.
Good night,
I'm
Woo.
trying to get caught up on the comments here. Can you explain purgatory? Average Joe's want to know, can we explain purgatory? From what I understand, purgatory is a place to kind of repent, to fix anything bad you did before you go either upstairs or downstairs. That's what I know.
Says, I think somebody wants to know, can you explain purgatory? sorry about that. I thought I had turned off again. I don't know what's going on with that.
No worries.
Let's see.
Yeah, they're wanting to know if we can explain purgatory.
Okay, purgatory. If somebody want to know about purgatory, that is a Catholic invention, folks. Okay. Purgatory.
Urso says one question I've had. I'd have how's this demon showed up to you and your elementals didn't come forward. One of yours, the tall one, came to me on Saturday. The one on lefts with antlers or antler. I think you mean antlers. Must be for
Who
you.
is he?
Urso.
Well,
Says,
first off, Urso, and everybody in the chat, my Native American blood in connection to other things is just as sacred as it is to my spiritual beliefs as far as Christ and God goes. But I will only call upon something to protect me when I feel like I can't protect myself. That's the thing. And they know that. Everything that is around me knows that. I am not a weak person. I'm not feeble-minded. I am not any way, shape, or form afraid of anything. And I've said that millions of times on this podcast. Nothing is going to deter my faith and my belief in being protected by God, the Heavenly Father. Plain and simple. Okay. And my ancestors medicine and spiritual protection is always around me. Okay. I don't even have to ask for protection from them. They are constantly around me, protecting me. Okay. And that is just something that is deep within my genes and my blood. That's the big part of my heritage, my background, is having my ancestors protecting me. Okay. And I never have to ask for it ever. It's like when I go out into the woods and I'm walking around and say I'm researching or investigating something, odd or supernatural or strange or weird, whatever you want to call it, paranormal, cryptid. I'll put my hands on the trees and stuff, and I'll try to get a feel for the environment to give me knowledge of what's going on. Okay, it's that same thing. We are literally conduits to God. Okay, that's what we are as humanity, and the demonic and the evil know it. They know that if they can get rid of that conduit to the Creator, they can get away with bloody murder down here, and they can't do it because God is protecting His children. Okay, that's why they call it faith. Plain and simple. They call it faith for a reason. So I don't know how you feel about that, Eric and Dennis, but you guys go ahead. I'm gonna drink some more coffee.
You remember that night that I was how do you put it in a good term? Something came after me during a live with you. I think it was on a Friday night show we had. And I had to stand my ground and command him in Yahuwah and Yeshua's name to leave. You're not welcome here. And that's one thing, you got to stand your ground. You got to command. You can't command him yourself. You have to command him through Yahuwah and Yeshua. One of the biggest things.
I think, when we were talking about that, definitely we got to remember something very important. We should worship the Creator and not the creation. That's the main thing that we've always got to keep in mind. Although we can love the creation, nothing wrong with that. Definitely, we should. But we worship the Creator. That's the main way that you look
exactly.
at these, whatever
Just
that
like
may be.
Just
But
like Marcy
if
said
I'm
right there.
getting attacked, if I'm being attacked by a shadow creature of some sort or something like that, I do the one thing that works. Okay.
Yep,
I'm not going to sit around experimenting with things I don't know. I'm going to do what I know works, and that is, the blood of Jesus on these things works. It drives them away. It gets rid of the problem, and if it works, I'm going to use it definitely. That's just the way I look at it. And it is a matter of faith, though. You got to have faith to use that. There's got to
exactly.
be that faith there in place to connect up with the use of that. Very much. It's very much like that scene in that vampire movie. What was the name of that movie? Vampire movie about the vampire lived next door. And anyway, in one scene in the vampire movie where he pulls a cross out on the vampire and starts up the stairs at him, and the vampire laughs at him and says, "You got to have faith to use that." You know,
Yeah,
and that's the way that works. And I think later on in the movie he does it again, and this time he has faith, and the vampire starts backing up. But that's the way these things work. If you don't have faith, it, I told somebody about this the other day. Somebody asked me about that. How you kill a werewolf, of course. Silver bullets, right? But listen, it's not just the bullet because it's silver. Here's the number one thing. It's a blessed bullet. Okay, that's what does the job. When I was in law enforcement, I blessed my bullets in my gun. I had them blessed, okay? That's what does the job, not just the silver. Well, silver's good, you understand. Silver is very good to have for that, but that's not what that's alone is all about. Faith is what gets things done. A faith is a living faith, not a dead faith. A living faith is put in action. Real faith is put in action. That's how you activate it. That's the way it works.
exactly.
Got a question from Dominatrix. I'm just kidding. Dominator. What would you do if you encountered a shadow figure attacking you while you sleep? And I've had this happen to me many times. I don't know if you guys have or not. I mean, in the beginning, I can't say no words, but in my mind, I'm constantly rebuking them in the name of Yahuwah and Yeshua. Eventually, I get the words out, and the more that I say it, and the louder I get, the weaker it becomes before it's gone. I don't know if you guys have experienced that or
I haven't.
Absolutely. Go
I
ahead.
haven't. I can honestly say I haven't. Because first off, and you need to understand one thing when you're dealing with the shadow people and the shadow beings, that there's several things that you can do, and the first thing I do before I go to sleep at night is the last thing I do, and I'll say a prayer. Okay, and I will in that prayer I will feel the connection to the Creator, to God, okay, to Jesus, and I will claim protection over me while I sleep. And I can honestly say that since I started doing that, when I was younger in the dark arts and everything, I used to get attacked all the time. It was just something I dealt with. Okay. But recently, within the last, I don't know, 20 years or so, I've come to realize that there is protection in prayer. Just like Dennis and Eric and I said in the beginning of the podcast tonight, that words are spells, words have power. Okay. And if you back that with your faith, nothing is going to harm you. Nothing. But you have to have solid faith. You literally have to have solid faith. That's the only thing that's the saving grace. Okay. Is your faith. You need to be unwavering. Stand upon the rock, not the sand.
Absolutely. That's what faith is basically about. Knowing without really understanding. That's another way to say it. And that rock is definitely what you stand on. That rock is Jesus Christ. The blood of Jesus gets things done.
Yep.
I have seen demons cower from it. I've
Yep.
seen things. The Bible gives you a very valiant and wonderful promise. If you resist the devil, he will flee from you. But you got to do the resisting. Okay, you got to do that act of faith against him in order for that to work.
Exactly.
And let me say, and you can't do it this way. You can't say, "Oh, will you please leave me alone, please? Okay, pretty please leave me alone." You don't do that. You command him in the name
Exactly.
of Jesus. By command, I mean demand it,
Yep.
and he will have to leave you alone, no matter what the situation is. I'm gonna tell you why, because I've said this so many times before in the past. It bears saying again. Evil, in whatever form it may take in this world, my friends, evil wants to keep you a victim because it fears you as a warrior.
Yep.
That's when it gets
Exactly.
scared and runs, turns tail and runs. When you stand up to it, just like any bully does. Okay, we've all run into bullies at school. Okay, you stand up to them, you usually take care of that problem.
Yep. Exactly. Exactly. And it's when it's like I always say to everybody, you know, show no fear, have no fear, because as long as you claim the protection of Jesus Christ and the blood and the Creator to protect you, you don't have a reason to fear. Okay, it's like Dennis just said, all evil will run from that. Okay, so you know,
Let me say this. Let's say you're walking down through the worst neighborhood. Let's say you're walking down through the worst neighborhood in Chicago, South Side. Okay, you're walking down through there, and on each side of you, you got 300-pound bodyguards. Okay, you trust those bodyguards, so you walk without fear. Well, that should be the way you look at God. He's your bodyguard. Your trust is in Him. Okay, He will take care of that situation for you. That's the way you got to look at it. And that's what we mean by trust, having no fear. That's what it is.
exactly,
And we need to look at it that way a lot of times and understand that's what faith means by action and
yeah.
belief. Jesus
Well,
said in
I
the
want
Bible
to.
Tammy,
very plainly,
Yeah,
believe, receive, and you shall
I'm
have it.
I'm gonna let
Tammy,
you
this
and
should
Eric.
apply to your.
I'm gonna let you guys talk for a minute. All right, I gotta take a breather.
Yep. Tammy, this will kind of fit with your question as well. And a lot of it, when you're dealing with this supernatural stuff, and even sometimes paranormal, but mainly focused on supernatural, because supernaturals, they're evil, they're powerful, they can do a lot of damage. But this, what we were talking about, kind of goes along with your question here. So I hope that helped you out a lot. Let me see. I was reading some chats here a minute ago. Let me see if I can find out where it was. Uh, you're welcome, Average Joe. Let me get down to it. Let me find out where's that. Okay, so Marcy's talking about something. Um, I think it was Marcy. Okay, that wasn't the one I was thinking of. Faith over fear. Yep. Oh, I'm sorry. It was Sue. Sue James. At a previous place where my family and I lived, I experienced 4 minor health issues. Although for me, they were somewhat minor because they lasted a while. The other apartments had a lot of dysfunction. Um, People living in them maybe something negative was there. I rarely get sick. Now, supernatural entities definitely can cause sickness and harm, depending on their
Absolutely,
ranking
absolutely.
prior.
There are a lot of demonic forces behind sickness and all
Yep,
that, and they get behind it, and they may sometimes it may not be the cause of it or the reason of it, but they can amplify it for their own
yep,
purposes. Just the same way they like to get behind mental illnesses and use them, whatever they may be, whatever it can be a very small mental illness or something very bad, whatever the situation, they use it, they get behind it, and they utilize it for their own purposes. And
hmm
a lot of times, if they can make you sicker, they definitely will, because that's to their advantage, and they're using that against you. Just like that thing that manifested here in this place with me. Like I said, it took me weeks to get over it, physically and mentally and emotionally. It was on such a scale I've never known before. Okay, you don't ever want to run into a situation like that, but if you do, you do know that you can recover physically from it pretty easily. If you ever get attacked like that, I'll tell a lot of people, it will drop your blood sugar. It will do things to you. You need to get you a piece of chocolate, get you a piece of candy, drink a little brandy, or whatever situation you need to do to get that blood sugar back up, because it can deplete you physically against you. And I have actually had a lot of people come up to me during investigations and say, I'm just sick. I am completely sick at my stomach. I'm feeling bad. This can also be an indicator of extreme paranormal activity. It can affect you that way. It can make you sick. Oh, absolutely. And I've had a lot of people over the years tell me that and they have had even bad health issues because they got into this stuff and got deep into it. And like I say, if this is your weakness, and they know you're weak physically, mentally, or spiritually, they're going to come after you like sharks after blood in the water. That's the way they work. And
Exactly.
when they know you at your weakest, that's when they're going to attack. Here's one thing you got to remember, and I say this a lot of times. People say, "Oh, you're crazy, Dennis, for saying it." But there's one good thing about evil. Did you know what that is? One good thing about evil, it's predictable. Okay. If you study it and watch it, you will understand how it works. Okay. And you can be ready for it. So when you're down and you're feeling bad, or you're physically something's bothering you, you got your mind on something, whatever the situation, understand this. You are prime target then. So be
Exactly.
ready for it. You can get ready for it and be ready.
Always be ready for the battle, folks. Always be ready for the battle, because they're not going to rest one moment without attacking some way, shape, or form. So you have to prepare yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually every moment of your life, because we are in times right now where supernatural warfare is upon us, and it's getting more and more prevalent every day. Every day.
And you know what? One more good thing about evil is give it enough room. Give it enough rope, it'll hang itself. It will always
Oh,
reveal itself eventually, somehow or another. The mask will slip. You'll catch a glimpse, folks. A lot of times I've had a lot of people over the years, I saw something out of the corner of my eye. I shook hands with a guy one time. That's why I warn people a lot about this, shaking hands. I shook hands with a guy one time. I looked down, shaking hands, not with a human being, but some kind of reptilian thing. Okay, I mean, it had black claws on it, and I looked back up. I dropped his hand real quick, looked at him, and he was like, "Oh, you saw that, huh?" And turned around and he took off. Okay, be very careful about stuff like that, because
Exactly.
watch out, because it will slip on them sometimes. Okay, that glamour that they're putting on, I call it illusional glamour.
Yeah.
That they're putting out is not
Hollywood makeup.
It slips a lot, folks, because it takes, I think, a lot of energy to maintain that stuff. Okay,
Yeah.
so watch for it. Watch the eyes. Boy, the eyes are definitely in the windows of the soul. Watch those.
Exactly. How long have we said that there, Dennis? The eyes are the windows. If you see something that's really red, illuminated red, bright red or orange, that's demonic. Okay. And I'm not saying,
I got another saying too, William. I got another one saying, if it's got eye shine, it ain't human.
Exactly. Yep. Miriam,
so
good
I'm
to see you.
kind of curious of what Sue's been talking about. We were leaving off. She's added some more. Had a few mysterious things happen there many times. I saw something gray out of the peripheral vision. Felt being watched frequently. She also said, is there something about that gray? Which a lot of what you're talking about in this chat that we've been going over sounds very demonic to me. Now they can, like we talked about earlier in the show, they can appear as something that can cause fear upon you because they want that fear. That fear gives them access. They feed upon that fear. That is something they're going to do. And
Well, I
I
tell
mean,
you
I
something
could be
about
wrong, but for me, look at this. Seems like something demonic in that home.
I have seen spiritual energy on a lot of occasions. I know William has too, of course. Here.
Mhm.
It can have a dark gray texture, like color to it. It can be dark gray looking, and but it can appear as black as well. I mean, you don't get hung up on the color, okay? Because it can come in different varieties. We've talked about that before in the past about the eyes. Sure, red eyes are usually definitely a dead giveaway, but it can be white eyes too. It can be solid black eyes too, as well. So whatever doesn't look natural, but this feeling of being watched is something that we have kept from the jungle. Okay, that's something we've kept from the forest. Was something that's built into us as human beings. Pay attention to that, though. See, that's where people run into a problem and have a problem with it. It's like Johnny Depp said on Pirates of the Caribbean: the problem is not the problem; it's the problem you got with the problem. Okay, and the problem is they ignore that. They ignore it. Do you think
Yep.
people with mental health issues, autism, are definitely spiritually targeted? Absolutely, they're weaker.
Yep.
If they're weaker
Yep.
in the mind, they're open territory for these things. Yep.
They're more
And
trusting
let me
too,
say
though.
something about people with multiple personalities. Okay,
Mhm.
I hate to say this, but most of the time they're demon possessed people because
Yep.
the demonic has got
Exactly.
in them. And they will. There may be more than one demon, and that appears as being multifaceted thing going on.
And if you think about the way the world is today, folks, with people that are being attacked, it's the less fortunate people that are being attacked. It's the children, the elderly, the disabled, you know, the mentally disabled and physically disabled. I mean, they're
They
they're,
love
they're the
the
ones they're the
they
ones
love
that are
the young
being attacked the
and
most right
the
now because
they love the young
the
and the innocent,
darkness, the demons
the
can
young and the
actually
innocent blood.
see that weakness
Uh,
within them.
Yeah. You also, now this is
mm,
100% my theory, my opinion, my hypothesis. But a lot of this stuff that you were just asking, be what people are more acceptable. I think a certain organizations have purposely made people this way for that purpose. That's just my opinion, my theory, my hypothesis. But for me, it fits the puzzle piece pretty well. I don't know about you guys.
I'm gonna say this about something we need to realize about the fallen angels, and they're the supervisors. They're in charge of a lot of this stuff. Okay, let me tell you something about them. There's one probably sitting on the board of every corporation in this world. There's probably
Exactly.
one sitting on the school boards. They're sitting in the military boards. They're in the Pentagon, folks. They're everywhere. Okay, and they're in charge. A lot of times, they're pulling the strings on the puppets that we vote for. Okay, that's what they're doing, and that's what they're up to. And we got to understand what the power base of these things is. And once we understand the power base, we'll have at least one leg up in the saddle. We'll know what
Exactly.
we're up against. But that's how insidious these things are. And they're creating they are creating situations to use that power with. And they're
Exactly.
causing a lot of things in this world and will continue to do so until, like I said, this is God's problem. He's going to take care of it, and only He is going to take care of it. Not any president, no Congress, no nation, no military is gonna wipe this problem out. Only
Yep.
God is going to be able to do that in the end. That's how far ranging this is. And like I said, it does not surprise me. It's interdimensional and intergalactic as well.
Exactly. And Miriam's got a question there
Period.
too.
And you and me have talked about this
Wait,
a
red
lot.
eyes are always evil. What about orange, yellow eyes?
Yeah.
Well, they can be kind of like a tiger, I think, has this kind of orange, kind of yellow eyes, like a what we're talking about, though, mainly when you're talking about red demonic eyes, they're glowing red. Okay, they're not
Yes.
just an animal shine red. Okay, we're talking about a very. When I ran into those two skinwalker sisters I talked about, when I seen them go up the road, whatever they became, whether large coyotes or wolves, I don't know. They turned and looked back at me, and their eyes were glowing red. I mean, it was dark and it was unmistakable.
And
It
that
was
is,
fine, you know.
yeah, that is the
And
evil demonic entity that's within them that gave them the transformation from that. I can guarantee that because
we're
I had
not
the
talking.
same thing happen to me.
We're not talking
yeah,
about red eye shine. We're talking about red glowing eyes. There is a difference between red glowing eyes and red eye shine. That's something that people mistaken quite often. There is a
That's
big
because of the
difference between
power.
the two.
Yeah, that's because of the power. That's why it glows that bright. It's the spiritual power that's behind that for the transformation. And you know, I can't say it enough. I have dealt with that. Oh my God, I can't even count how many times I would have to have 100 toes and 100 fingers on my body to even count part of the time how many times I've had that happen in ceremony. It is literally a show of their supernatural power that is manifesting through the human body and making them literally have that transformation, that change through the manifestation of the evil that is within that entity that's joined within the human body. Okay, that's why that eye shine is so predominant and so evil feeling. And when I say evil feeling, that eye shine will make you feel the worst evil that you'd ever felt before in your life. Okay, when Dennis and I and Eric talk about how the eyes are the windows to the soul, we mean it. Plain and simple.
whatever's evil inside, it's going to show up outside sooner or later.
Exactly.
There it goes. Yeah. But most animals that have eye shine usually are animals that are adapted to night vision. Type animals, coyotes, wolves, stuff like that. But these things would have an eye, a night eyes like that, definitely. But yeah, whatever's on the inside eventually shows up outside, and that
Exactly.
includes reptilian skin or anything like that happens. It's going to show up, like we said earlier. They're gonna slip up.
Yep.
Sooner or later.
Exactly.
And you got to
Well,
think too.
I
I
mean,
was talking
it's
about this earlier about what we were talking about on my show with Jessica Sunday. Is the energy. I mean, and William felt this, and he wasn't even there when I was doing that initial investigation of the werewolf / dog man report. Something very, very, very evil was there and trying to lure me away from where I was actually at.
it
And the
wanted to
more I
attack you.
ignored it, the stronger. Yep. The more I ignored it, the stronger it got. To the point that I knew that I was not fixing to be here anymore. And the reason why I left that night was because I knew I was not prepared to deal with what that was. What that entity was very old and very evil.
Well, let me tell
Can't
you
tell you what
something
it
about.
was.
Let me say
Mhm.
something about that. Okay, listen very closely to what I'm about to tell you, and I've seen unequivocal evidence of what I'm about to say. There are covens of witches. There are covens of vampires. There are covens of werewolves. I got a report last week of somebody actually seeing what he thought were dogmen, but it sounds like more like werewolf activity to me. They were actually out in the woods doing some kind of a ritual. Okay. Now let me say this to you. If you're out in the woods, you better keep your head on a swivel because you never know when you're going to walk into that kind of a situation or that kind of an area that they're using. Let me tell you something else about those areas. They put wards over those areas. They put guardians over those areas.
Yep.
Okay, and it could be a dog man, it could be a werewolf, it could be a many number of things. I have actually run into guardian demons like that. Okay,
Yep.
they leave them there like watchdogs. Okay,
Yep.
Yeah.
And if
so
anybody
be very careful.
remembers, yeah,
You
if
have to be
anybody
careful.
remembers Yeah, if anybody remembers what I've talked about before, is I've always told everybody that the reason you see so many of these dark cryptid creatures within the cemeteries and the graveyards and on the burial mounds and anywhere there was sacred land that the indigenous people claimed as sacred land, be it the Black Hills, be it, the Badlands, whatever you call it, we actually, in ceremony, the medicine people actually
The
prayed
cursed
and
land.
did ceremony to bring forth those
Mhm.
protective deities, okay, on those lands. So you're
Let
not
me
dealing with your normal cryptids when you're going into cemeteries and graveyards and burial grounds and burial mounds and
let me
sacred
say
land.
this too. Let me say this too, and we got to understand this as well. Not every cryptid out there is natural.
Exactly.
There naturally. Some of this stuff, my friends, can be conjured up from the darkness. I
Yep.
know without a doubt dogmen can be conjured up by the darkness. I'm getting and
Yep.
hearing reports of them appearing in jail cells, in people's houses.
Yep.
This is something conjured from the darkness, people.
Yep.
And Bigfoot can be the same thing. This could be something, some kind of a thing brought forth from the darkness. It's not always a natural or unnatural natural thing that's out there.
Yep.
And let me tell you
Exactly.
what, when you hear stuff hanging around a graveyard, the red flag goes up demonic. They love places of the dead.
Yep.
It draws like magnets. They're drawn to it like a magnet.
Yep. Exactly. Well, I'm going to let you
Well, and this,
guys finish it up. I know it's been a long night so far, and I know Dennis, you've had a long night too, brother. And I appreciate you staying up with us this late, and Eric, you too. I'm going to let you guys go ahead and close out the conversation and answer whatever final questions we can have, and I'm going to take a breather break. Okay.
Okay.
and to me, according to the client, both the clients, as reported seeing this same entity 50 yards of place within 4 miles of each other. To me, it's straight up werewolf. The description sounds like it and everything. And the interesting thing about where this thing has been spotted was a huge Civil War battlefield. A lot of death and a lot of blood was
Mhm.
spilt on this land. So you got all that negativity from people's feelings, from deaths, a lot of pain, a lot of anger, a lot of hate, a lot of disdain. That's going to fuel supernatural entities. Even some that's been here, not conjured up, has been here for a while. When you have a place that's got that much negativity, death, emotion to it, they're going to be drawn to areas like that. And that's kind of what I was feeling when I was there. So, I mean, you have to take that when you're going out looking at stuff. That's something you have to take into consideration. That's how I look at it. I don't know if you feel that way or not, Dennis.
Yeah. You know, there's a lot of stuff out there that you know the darkness is attracted to places like this, places of trauma, blood. I think it's sort of like a sacrifice of blood to the land itself. The land becomes stained with that darkness and all. And to me, that speaks a lot too of that area. There's certain areas I've been into, like I could feel that evil aura around it. I could feel that there was something definitely there wasn't right. And I've been to a lot of murder sites. You get that, you pick up on that feeling in places like that. Wherever there's been trauma, death, suffering, pain, wherever it may be, in mental hospitals or whatever the situation, you're going to definitely have
Nope.
demonic spirits hanging around places like that, without a doubt.
Mhm. Caleb, thank you so much, man. You're awesome. You're badass. Thank you,
Thank you,
Caleb.
Caleb.
So we're approaching that 2 hour mark, and I know you guys are getting tired. Dennis, if you wouldn't mind, kind of talk a little bit about your channel and your books, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, I have 3 shows presently going 3 times a week. Monday nights at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, my good friend Gerald Fountain, we do the Road Less Traveled. Wednesday night at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do the Hunting the Shadows on Wednesday night. Friday nights at 9 o'clock p.m. All my shows are 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do Paranormal Point of View. Also, I have some books available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. Just look up the author, Dennis W. Carroll. I also have a consultation service. I consult with people on paranormal problems, demonology, whatever the situation. You can contact me at denniswcarroll.com, or you can also email me at denniswcarroll@gmail.com.
Awesome. So I'll just give you guys a heads up. Some things have changed, so I may not be live tomorrow for William's show. Possibly not for my campfire chats either. I've got to handle a couple things we couldn't get done today. Plus, we're doing my daughter's birthday tomorrow. So I'm not. If I have a show, I'll put it up. But if you don't see it, that's why. It's because I'm a little busy. Uh, don't know what I'm doing Sunday show on right now. I was going to do demons because I have started a new book today. I woke up today and it was heavy on my heart to write a book that right now I'm calling it Lucian, the Demon Hunter, First Hunt, about a angel that was dragged from heaven during the battle in heavens, the war in heaven, and so he is now on Earth fighting demons. So I've got quite a bit of chapter. I've got the introduction done, and most about half of chapter one done. So my INR readers, keep an eye on Patreon. That should be put out tonight. Um, so I don't know what Sunday's show is going to be, especially considering we covered a lot of stuff on demons and angels today. So I want to probably switch that up Sunday, and I'll let you guys know. Uh, but
Yeah, we
with
can
that
always
being
talk
said,
about it.
yeah, we can. You can find my books on Amazon under e.d.testerman, just like it is on my name screen here. And if you guys ain't subscribed to the Bizarre and the Unknown, that's my YouTube channel. Saturdays I have shows at 5 o'clock Central Standard Time called Campfire Chats. It's a safe place for you to come and share your encounters. Sunday at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time is my Bizarre and the Unknown show, which we find a topic to cover about. Right now, I've got about 4 different topics running in my head, so I just got to pick one.
Sounds good. And everybody, please show your you know your love and all that, if you can, for both of Dennis and Eric by supporting their channels. I'm a big firm believer in that. You know, we are one big family, and we need to start. You know, there's so much dissension and disinformation in the fields right now that there's so much infighting going on in the paranormal field and in the supernatural field and in the cryptid field that we really need to stick together, okay, and really need to step forward as one big community and family. You know, it's not for the good of the one; it's good for all. You know, plain and simple. And I want to thank the moderators and everybody in the chat. It's been great. I appreciate you all very much, and look forward to every Friday night and weekend morning to spend time with you all and to talk to you all and to get your insight too. The chat was phenomenal tonight, and I appreciate it. Everybody did great, and I look forward to doing another Friday night. I don't know, depending on how I feel, because I'm not feeling too great right now. But depending on how I feel, I might come on in the morning. But I got it scheduled anyways at 11 a.m. So worst case scenario, it will just come on for about an hour and talk about cryptids and stuff like that. So yeah. Anyways, I don't have any books. You don't have to worry about that. I've got music. I got that part of it covered. So we'll play some music tomorrow and we'll talk about cryptids and go from there. I want to thank Dennis for being here tonight, and Eric. You guys were phenomenal. Love you both to death. You're my brothers. And if you ever need me, I'll be there. So.
Absolutely.
So
With that.
one thing I want.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry.
No,
One
go
thing
ahead.
I need to mention: if somebody's telling you they're an expert, you might want to run away. I'm not trying to be mean because there's no experts. We, the three of us don't always agree on the same thing on the same topic, but that doesn't mean I'm going to say that either one of these guys are wrong and I'm right, or they're right and I'm wrong. We have different views. Now that's how we build knowledge. And like like they used to say, my favorite cartoon when I was knee high to a grasshopper's ass, and that's G.I. Joe's. Knowing is half the battle. The only way you know is to discuss and experience. So
I don't know. I can't even remember some of the cartoons. I can't even remember some of the cartoons I watched as a kid, if I watched any at all. I seem to recall Gumby being in there somewhere.
I still run around from time to time going, "Yo, Joe." I used to do it in the Marines all the time.
Well, thank you guys for being here.
Peace, love, and blessings.
Take care, everybody, and we'll see everybody in the morning, hopefully. Dennis, take care, brother. Love you, man.
See you, Dennis.
In the dead of night, I hear them whisper. Shadows dance on walls, growing crisper. Echoes of the past, they start to rise. Monsters lurking deep beneath the skies. Fear grips my heart. I can't escape. Bump in the night, where the fears collide. Monsters awaken, nowhere to hide. Shadows are calling, they beckon me near. In the dance of the dark, I feel no fear. Moonlight reveals the horrors unseen. Whispers of darkness haunting my dream. Figures that twist in the corners of sight. I shiver alone in the grip of the night. Creatures of shadow come